Media queries are one of those things that are rather easy to pick up, but when you're working on a large project, using them frequently can become quite a mess. Having a way to organize your media queries and also creating variables for your breakpoints is definitely key to building a very organized project. That's why in this episode, I want to take a look at a small SASS library dedicated to organizing your media queries. It is called Include Media. It was created by Eduardo. I think Bocas, I think that's how you say his last name, I'm not entirely sure. But he had created this in order to better organize or better write your media queries. Now this does use SASS, and granted, even though it's a library, you don't really need to install it. You can just copy a SASS file and then import it into your project. The example project I have here using this library is a very simple React app, and all it does is it shows the different screens dependent on the viewport that we're on. So right now we have a large desktop screen, and once we get to that breakpoint of under 1900, we get to a desktop viewport only, and then we get to a tablet to laptop / desktop viewport. Once we hit 768, that's when we hit to a large phone or tablet. And then once we get down to a 425, I believe, that's when we get to a large phone, and it stops at 420. But I do think it's 425, yeah, it is. And then finally, once we get down to 360, that's when we're at the phone viewport. So you can see it's just switching between the different screens that we're on, and I did quite a bit of research to find what the popular viewports were, and I did add them into this project. This isn't going to be a long, extensive project, nor is there going to be a huge learning curve here. Everything is rather simple to use. Again, make sure you go and check out Eduardo's profile on GitHub. He has a ton of great content here, and you could definitely learn more. If you do want to check out more documentation regarding his Include Media, there is a Learn More section. His website's currently down, Include Media. I don't know if he's going to get that back up, but there are articles written about it, which you should definitely check out. If we go ahead and jump into our project, you can see the app CSS or app SCSS doesn't really have much right now. All it has is a layer class name with a bit of styles. Now we do have an import at the very top, and this is importing Eduardo's library. It's called Breakpoints CSS, and that's just for me. I just had named it Breakpoints. But essentially here, it's the entire package or library that he had created. At the very top, there is a breakpoints variable, which goes through the 4 popular breakpoints: phone, tablet, desktop, and large desktop. You can add whichever ones you want here, and then you can call them in your app SASS file. But essentially, this file is just the entire package. He has a lot of comments here and examples, which is really good. You can go through and learn more about it. But essentially what makes this special is the fact that you can combine your variables and your breakpoints up here. You can combine these with numbers you might just come up with randomly if there is a one-off case. You can also combine them with expressions, which is really good. And there's also checking, which checks that if you're doing things correctly. It's really good in my opinion because you no longer need to write min or max anymore. You sort of have the equal sign or the greater or less than, which in my opinion is just ideal. You can go through and check out all the functions he had created if you want to learn more about it. In our case, we're just going to come up with a few examples that we can use and just sort of talk about the package itself. Now, like I did mention, we are using React, but that doesn't really matter for us since we're just dealing with SASS. Any project you might have SASS in, this sort of applies to you. Let me go ahead and hit Command B, and let's jump to our app.js. And like I mentioned, all we're doing is importing app SASS and have a div for layer. If we go back into our app SASS, we can then write our first media query. I want to first take a look at the project so we can close this GitHub. And all we can see here is just a div that has nothing going on for itself. So let's just fix that. First I want to do is I want to add a phone breakpoint just so that we can make edits to a phone device. Let's go into our app SASS here, and the way this works is we're going to write an @include, and this allows us to include mixins that were created through this breakpoints file. So in here there is a media function that we can call. In our case, we're just going to write media, and then we're adding parentheses, and what we're saying is if the viewport is less than or equal to a phone device, we're going to want to run certain styles within these 2 brackets. So what I want to happen is I want to add a background color of the orange variable that we have at the top. And I also want to add a pseudo element just to add some text. So I could add before and then write content. And in here, we're just going to say phone viewport. Let's save this. And what should happen is once we get down to that phone viewport, we should change the background color and add a phone viewport text. Now this is all very basic stuff. I mean, we all expected this to happen. Nothing special is happening here because this is what a media query is supposed to do. But the special thing here is the way we write the syntax and how easy it is to write. All we're doing is we're including the media function and then adding a string parameter that will define the width of the device or the viewport. In our case, it's a phone. And if we go to our breakpoint SASS, the phone is equal to 360 pixels. So what this is saying, like I mentioned again, is if the screen is less than or greater to the phone, we're going to do this. So in our back here, if we go here, 370, that's greater. Once we get under 360 or 360, that's when that will run. Now you'll tend to notice also in SASS, you write the media queries inside the class names. This is an awesome feature in SASS, in my opinion, compared to CSS, where you need to write it outside the class. Granted, you won't write it like so. You would have to write the at media query. So now that we have our first media query, let's go in and create some more. What I want to do next is usually with phone devices, some of them might get a bit large, so some of them might reach that 425. So there's a mobile L over here that says 425 pixels. I want to create a media query that is going to be between this phone and it's going to reach the capacity of a large phone device, which is at 425 pixels. Now this is the cool part where I can include a variable breakpoint as well as include my own custom number. So the custom number that I'm going to add is 425 pixels. To do so, we're going to do the same thing with write at include. We're going to add that media function and we're going to first pass in is we want it to be greater than the phone, which is greater than 360, if I could spell phone. And all you need to do is add a comma and then pass in another parameter, which is going to say greater than or equal to 425 pixels. Let's add the brackets and we're just going to copy what we have up here, except we're going to change the color to a purple and then we're going to say large phone viewport. So we can add our own custom number, which was not defined within our breakpoints, which is pretty cool. And we could also add this phone variable, which was defined in our breakpoint. So you can combine and mix, which is honestly really helpful because other libraries or the standard media queries don't necessarily allow you to do it all that well, and it gets a bit tricky. Now, if we take a look at our project, we can see we're at 425 with a large phone viewport. And once we get to 360, we hit that phone viewport. So it switches between large and phone. And once we get past that 425 is when we're no longer in our media query. Now this is awesome because, like I mentioned, when you're working with large projects, you tend to be rather redundant and sometimes you create your own numbers because there's one-off cases. So this allows you to do it just well as including the fact that you can use that breakpoint. Now, if I keep going, this might get rather redundant, so I'll do two more. And I also want to talk about expressions. So expressions can include the retina display. It can also include if it was a handheld device, and then screen and print as well. So when you do media screen, you could do that. In our case, we can also do a retina, and we could do it at 2 times. I think there's a 3 times for retina as well. So if we pass in retina 2x here, we can see that it's also being picked up in terms of this being represented as a retina display. All right, so that's really cool. I'm gonna do one more of these and then that should be the end of the video. So like always, we're just going to do at include. And what I wanna do is I wanna pick up a screen that's bigger than our tablet size. And I want it to also be smaller than our desktop. So it's going to be between those two numbers, the desktop and the tablet. I can't spell desktop. Desktop. That's right? Yeah. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to change the color to the blue. So I could just put that variable blue. I don't know why I copied blue like that. All it is just writing blue. And I could say greater than tab and then smaller than desk. And then once we resize this, we can see that we're hitting that 768, which is our tablet. If I can get it to 767 and 768, 769, because we didn't put the equal sign. So I put greater than tablet and tablet is represented at 768. We could then see once we get past that 366, I believe. Yeah, once we get past that number, we could see that it's going away because that is what our desktop size is. Like I said, if I add that equal sign, so it's equal greater than or equal to 768, and I go to 768 here, it's going to still work. So that's going to be it for this video. If you did enjoy, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And check this out because, like I mentioned, this package is definitely awesome. It's called Include Media. I'll have it linked in the description, and I'll also have the article linked in the description as well, so you could catch up on your reading and learn more about media queries. That's going to do it for this video. Have a wonderful day.